Hello and welcome to Conquering the Future of Work, a discussion about digital employee experience. Hi, I'm James Robertson from Step 2. So I've been in this space for a very long time, more than 25 years now, and have published a bunch of different books on intranets and more recently have been really spearheading the drive towards digital employee experience. Frank, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Frank Pathyil. I am the Director of Partnerships and Partnership Strategy with Workgrid Software out of New Hampshire.
And my name's Brad Rooke, and I'm a Senior Solutions Consultant with the Customer Experience team at Igloo Software. I've been with Igloo about 3 years, and my job is to help our customers love their digital workplaces.
Oh, we want that. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
We want a bit of love happening. So today is going to be a round table. So it's going to be the three of us having a chat, which I think is always the most enjoyable way of interacting. There will be just us and we will not be throwing up slides, and we will just be having a conversation. And where I guess I want to start things is to say that the world has changed a lot over the last 25 years that certainly I've been involved in this space. And, you know, intranets are still very much a thing. They are not dead. They're not trendy. They're often not sexy. But they are, when done well, tremendously important in ways that we'll be exploring in this session. But obviously, they're just one tool in the wider digital workplace, which is a full set of digital tools, platforms and systems to support work. And the key thing I think to really flag is you don't deliver a digital workplace. You don't build a digital workplace. Everyone already has a digital workplace, back all the way to the earliest versions of Word and Outlook or Lotus 123, whatever it happened to be. And what we're seeing now is the influx of a lot of new tools, a lot of modern solutions into environments that are massively better than the ones we've had before. I mean, there used to be a big gap between consumer experience and enterprise experience solutions, and that gap is closing. So that's brilliant, but we're also bringing in a lot of complexity because we're bringing in a lot of new functionality. And if everyone has a digital workplace, are they happy with it? And we would argue that a great digital workplace is one that is seamless, frictionless, productive, usable. So all of the attributes around that. And this is going to be probably the core discussion that we're going to be kicking around today is how do we achieve that kind of vision? And then digital employee experience, I guess, is the new kid on the block as the top line strategic consideration. And it starts from, well, the outside world, customer experience. Now, customer experience is well understood. If you are a big corporate, a big bank, whatever, then you've long since stopped competing in terms of products or product features. It's understood now that you compete in terms of the experience holistically that you provide to customers. And that's across all of the touch points. That's, you know, reworking the website, then the mobile app, then the online forms, then all the way to the branches itself, if you're a bank. But if we talk about customer experience, then, well, we should also consider employee experience, because you can't deliver a great customer experience without an employee experience that matches it. And employee experience, I guess, is intuitively obvious in terms of what it means. It's typically broken down, though, into digital, physical, and cultural. And I guess for us geeks in this discussion, we're kind of putting our hand up for the digital bit of it, right? And so this is something that is becoming more and more important within organizations. And it has been turbocharged as a result of the pandemic. And we ran a survey last year, a global DEX survey, and 19% of people, 21% reported that DEX was greatly improved during the pandemic. And 45% of people, up from 43% the year before, said DEX is very or extremely important. So that's great. However, there's a couple of big gaps. Digital literacy is still highly variable. and some of the key cohorts within an organization, such as field and frontline staff, are sadly left behind. But if that's the scene setting in terms of how these pieces fit together, the first conversation is around, well, what is the state of the industry? What is the state of intranets, digital workplaces, and DEX? So Frank, what are you seeing at the moment?
And that's James, there's nothing I can argue with your intro. I mean, I think the garden of the intranet and the digital experience is rich right now, and I would say that the market is exploding with solutions that are coming in. What I have been seeing is that the concept of the intranet, the digital experience is everything that's inside your VPN at this point. It's what I am seeing anecdotally, and it's funny. I heard a stat last week that Okta is recently made mention that the number of applications that they are allowing single sign-on into, so the number of applications that are extensively in the intranet, has risen 60% in the last year.
Wow.
Which is huge. In a year. And that makes sense, right? If my job is to do I don't know, learning policies or purchasing computers or healthcare or some employee program, nobody is going to say no to me when I say, well, this is the best possible tool out there to go and help with the acquisition of chairs and desks for remote workers. They're just going to say buy it. And then suddenly there's now the regular buying of stuff solution, and then there's the chair buying solution. And if you need a desk, that's another solution, it's another department. And they're each great, but there's just more and more of them. And I think the idea that we used to be able to kind of corral the digital experiences like that horse has left the barn. Everybody is buying one of everything because one of everything is the best possible tool, and you have to get the best possible tools if you're going to be competitive.
Yeah, interesting. So Brad, what about you? What are you seeing?
Well, I think, you definitely hit it when you were talking about the idea of especially the accelerated transformation we saw through the period of the pandemic. So whether it's, the dispersal of how people work now, we've got people working from the office, we've got hybrid workplace, work from anywhere. There's a need for that democratization of information. I've often heard it put, the digital workplace, the intranet is your office online. It's that digital experience for your employees, regardless of where they work. So when you bring into conversation things like trends we're seeing, quiet quitting, the great resignation, things like that are starting to rear their heads, we're needing, as folks who are creating these digital experiences, we're needing to make that employee experience as seamless, as painless, as easy to use as possible. And I think the trend that I'm seeing is really a move towards that. There's a move towards personalization. There's moves towards making it a seamless experience, because when we have things like quiet quitting and the great resignation rearing their heads, we also have that need to attract and retain staff. And that's where rolling back to your digital experience, your digital workplace, your digital employee experience, your DEX, that's where that can be a real defining trend as to whether or not you attract and retain and keep those players that you want to bring into your organization. So you're representing your organization within this ecosystem, and it's imperative that it be an excellent experience.
So if that's one of the drivers for delivering a great digital employee experience, that employee retention side of things, I mean, are there other drivers that you see, Brad, in terms of that are making DEX important right now? And how serious are organizations considering all this?
I think, yeah, like Frank mentioned the idea of, and I like the way Frank put it, that we've got an application to buy desks and a different application to buy chairs and things like that. There is a lot of application dispersal. That Okta statistic was quite staggering. And it's really the idea of how do how do we manage all this within one ecosystem? So it comes back to that simplification aspect that I was speaking to, the idea that we really want to ensure that the employee has a centralized area where they can, a launch pad, if you will, to be able to work within these applications and not have this dispersal of information here, there, and everywhere. I mean, I think that's a big thing.
Yeah.
It's that centralization of knowledge. So if you come back to the idea that that trend with the as I put it, the virtual representation of your office online, it's not just a knowledge dump. It's an area for corporate communications. It's an area for collaboration. It's an area for organizations to show off their culture and engagement. These are big things that we're really starting to see, especially on the DEI side. We're really starting to see a lot of trends of organizations because employees are so dispersed from the offices. They're not necessarily going to these various groups and whatnot that are representative of DEI. So we're seeing organizations that have a need to put that out in the public space as well, or in the employment space, and say, this is who we are, and really bring employees into that sense of their culture as well, creating a sense of belonging and really alignment with the organization and its goals.
I mean, I love that you're going to really highlight the culture side of things there, because I think that's been one of the weakest areas in terms of our digital tools for employees. I mean, people, traditional intranet managers have been terrified of showing any human emotions on their sites. I mean, they're dry to the point of being, fossilized, which is a pity, because obviously most employees are reasonably passionate about what they do, and it's expressed in many other ways.
And if you look at a lot of that quiet quitting statistics and stuff like that, I wonder if a lot of that stuff is what is kind of the outgrowth of intranet managers being slow about these things, and general intranet policies. Everything from the information silos and so on. There is some percentage of this quiet quitting. There's people who are just tired. They feel more disengaged from their company. They go from a very engaged employee to a somewhat disengaged employee to, I am just going and turning on my laptop for 8 hours and I feel disconnected from my brand, and I am now, and that's the predecessor to quiet quitting. So I think in many respects, while I think the market is healthy, I think the practice, we are still playing catch up on a lot of the practices. And I think a lot of those, we talked about it last week in Las Vegas when we rolled out guided attention. A lot of the statistics about, spend a third of your week looking for stats and 1,500 page click views and stuff like that. We are now paying the piper, and that is probably quiet quitting, the Great Resignation, and kind of disengagement and stuff like that. And the only way you pull those people back is to really actually mean it when you think about building a better digital experience, building a better culture, and both culturally re-engaging the employee, and then honestly trying to figure out how to make their work life better.
Well, and you hit a really good point there as well, Frank. The idea of I mentioned the idea of a digital workplace and intranet not being a knowledge dump, just a knowledge dump anymore. And you brought up the idea that people are spending so much time looking for information. There's that aspect of self-service as well. That's such a big trend right now. I want to find the information I need. I want to find the corporate knowledge. I want to be able to immerse myself in the corporate culture, but I don't want to spend all day doing it. Right. That's another big thing, is I want to be able to, and I don't want to have to ask anybody for direction. I want to be able to serve myself within a tool that meets those needs easily, readily, and in a repeatable fashion.
So then how, I guess a question to both of you, but starting with you, Brad, as the provider of a lovely intranet solution, how big a role, should a modern intranet be playing within our digital employee experiences these days?
I think with the pandemic, I've mentioned this in a couple of webinars before, but it really resonated with me. My background's in security, and one of the things that we always talked about was mission criticality versus being mission essential, or maybe being not essential at all. And I really do believe that a digital workplace, a modern intranet, if you will, is mission critical. In today's dispersed workforce, we have to have something that really unifies that information, provides those cultural mores, provides a centralized place to go for people to get the information that they need in order to do their jobs, and to do so in a manner that's not frustrating to them, that's not unnecessarily time consuming, that sort of thing. So, I think it's got a real centralized place within the organization. I often say, working with customers, that ideally, your digital workplace, your intranet, is the first place that you start your day. It's a place that you're probably checking in periodically throughout your day, and it's probably the last place that you log off of at night. Just check those final messages, or you might have one more file you need to look up, that sort of thing. It's not something that you're in all day, every day, but it's something that you're in, and it's maybe a launch pad, a check-in, and then that final check before you leave, but it's there when you need it. And I think that's the most key piece. It's got to be something that's up and available for you to be able to access when you need it to perform your work functions.
Yeah, and I mean, I wrote a book that was titled Essential Intranets, to your point, saying, okay, most intranets are useful. You wouldn't turn it off, but you're not going to cross the street for it. Whereas you want it to be essential, right? I mean, integral to the day-to-day work of staff, directly supporting core business. And we definitely see the role of the modern intranet also as an enterprise front door. To your point, that jumping off point, start here if you don't know where to go, but also a place to give visibility to what's happening. Whether that is, from internal comms perspective, whether that's visibility of what's happening in collaboration or social tools, and, the business process side of the ability to what's happening. So I think that's a crucial role that as our organizations become more complex digitally, the intranets need to step up.
One thing I've seen, sorry, James, one thing I've seen that, just put me in mind there is the idea of onboarding. We've got these dispersed workforces. We've got people that may not see the inside of the office for any particular time, that sort of thing. Through the pandemic, if people were hired, they were onboarded virtually. So, I mean, that's one huge trend and one huge value add for the intranet, is the idea that we have that onboarding process baked into it. It's serving the double benefit of baking in organizational culture, as well as providing that employee with the guidance and with the welcome to the organization that is absolutely fundamental in creating that initial buy-in when I start a new role.
It's interesting. Obviously, I think all three of us are biased towards the importance of the digital experience. Otherwise, we're not here. Let me ask it this question, in case there is a pessimist who's watching this. We really should ask the question: how much are companies spending right now to get people back into physical workplaces? If you look at the spend on bouncy houses, free food, T-shirts, blah 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 blah, to get somebody back in once a week, twice a week, or something like that. I mean, as important as the digital experience is today, I would argue that I'm going to go visit this with your white collar staff. 100% of them are going to visit it 100%, every work day at some point, somehow. Your actual physical, those who are going to show up physically might be in 20% of the time, 40% of the time, occasionally 100% of the time, but a minority of staff are going back to work. A lot of that spend that we are spending on physical infrastructure, we really should look at how much we're spending to get people back into the workplace, and really think about, are we spending enough? Are we putting enough effort into actually making that DEX as important, as important as it should be? Because honestly, it's going to be really important. That impressive lobby does not impress the person who is virtually onboarded and then will show up to your head office for another year and a half.
That's absolutely true.
That was always one of those myths, though, right, Frank? Is that you have your impressive building with the impressive foyer that you spend all the time crafting, and you just pretend that everyone's going to see that, but of course they're not, because they're in different cities already in offices that are nowhere near as grand.
It is impressively empty right now.
Yeah, that's right. So then, Frank, how do we make sort of better use of the internet then in the context of the current situation?
Well, I think we have to realize we have to adapt to the current intranet, to the current purposes of the internet. And I think there's analogs that we have to draw to the newspaper and the rise of newspapers. We remember the time when newspapers used to be a thing that you receive every day, pull it off your doorstep, read all the news, et cetera, et cetera. And it started to fall out of style. And what became important was the ability to syndicate news out of newspapers to other places. There's an analog with what the best use of an intranet is now. it's not just about the news, it's got to provide some utility. We have lots of places to go, and Intranet really has to have a reason to pull you back in. It's not just the news, it's a place to go and get things done. It is that central piazza of the organization. News matters there, culture matters there, but from our viewpoint, you also have to be able to get stuff done there. You have to be able to catch up with the news of the day, take care of little tasks, run little bits of workflow, give purpose to that great real estate, and people will stay for the news, stay for the culture as well. And I think that is the transformation that is taking place in the Intranet in this era.
Yeah. I mean, for a long time now, a couple of decades, we've talked about the 5 purposes of intranets. So content, communication, and culture being the 3 traditional roles of the intranet. Collaboration and social, which actually is not often now done by intranets, but it may be done elsewhere. And then activity, to your point, Frank, intranet as a place for doing things, not just for reading things, and to properly do things, right? Not just, I've got all my electronic forms as PDFs that I download and then I print and fill in by hand and take a photo with my phone and then send to someone, and then they give me a ring because I've forgotten to fill in a field. But actual online forms and digitized processes.
Well, and that's something we're seeing as well, as like that big call for personalization. And it alludes very much to Frank's point, but the idea that it's not just a knowledge dump. Again, sorry for using it again and again, but that's it. It's not just a knowledge dump. It's not just that communications tool, but it's my communications tool. It's my knowledge. And to Frank's analogy, it's also my tasks, that sort of thing. So we are seeing a big trend towards personalization. I can log in and see what's important to the organization at any particular time. The trend that we're seeing a lot of now is I want to log in and see what's important to me. I want that stuff staring me in the face, because I want to take those actions so I can continue to perform. I know they're done and I can continue to perform other functions in my day. I want to know the news that's important to me, because that's the stuff that I need to know in order to get my job function done. Other stuff I can consume as needed. Frank made the analogy to a newspaper, and I think that's great, right? Maybe I don't always read the sports section because the sports section is not critical to my day. But at the same time, if I'm confronted with the stuff that is critical to my day, it gives me time maybe later to go back and read the sports section and spend a little time with it. So
it's funny after you, Frank.
Go ahead, James.
I mean, and I think the newspaper analogy, just to stick with that for a moment, it's funny, we go into organizations, our role is to help them work out how to proceed. And so we look at understand their current environment and their current practices. And internal communications is obviously, one of the key drivers, and commonly, a or the owner of the intranet. And so we look at how those internal communications are done. Well, it's the monthly, newsletter or newspaper sent out as PDF. And I'm like, okay, guys, so if you went down to the local newsagent, would you buy yesterday's newspaper? Well, obviously not, right? Who would want to buy yesterday's newspaper, right? So why are we sending out month-old news? And so, we've got a maturity model around sort of in digital internal communications, and it shifts from after the fact newsletter, newspaper, email to as it happens, modernized, conversations, better communication styles, and then sort of ultimately where you're flagging things, Brad, in terms of then that personalized experience. We're going to increase the volume of news while also simultaneously improving its relevance, because we're going to target it to a particular audience. And I know that the must know things are here. They're relevant to me. There's the nice to know stuff, that is on the internet or out in the social tool, wherever it happens to be. But that's a big shift for internal comms teams to do. I think they'd like to, but it's pretty daunting for them.
Yeah, I think the challenge comms teams have always had is to be, letter perfect on the message. And the fact of the matter is the agility isn't there. And I think the transformation that tools like Igloo allow for is, every day a little bit of news. And I think this is why we're so enthused by the partnership with Igloo, because the marrying of what Igloo is doing with news every day, with our ability to bring tasks and little things that I need to go get done every day to the same page, means that there's a compelling reason for an employee to come to that page, get the news, get the culture, get through stuff, and then go off to those myriad of other systems to go do whatever they need to do. But they've had that touch base. They've had that walk through the virtual lobby. They've kind of connected with messaging, connected with some employees, and they're off doing their off doing their workday. And I think this is where that's one of those benefits of a modern intranet. That's what intranet modernization is in this age of virtual work.
Yeah, that lovely idea of bringing things together. So what, I guess though, more broadly, in the context of the digital workplace or DEX at this higher level, I mean, what are the kind of the big organizational challenges that teams should be focusing on? Because we touched upon a bunch. I mean, which of those, I guess, do you see as the kind of the critical areas that organizations should be focusing on? Frank, what are your thoughts?
Look, I think to me, it's the rise of digital friction. It is just the sheer number of application sprawl. We used to think about intranets as there's a component of it IT, component of it HR, component of it as being communications. What is clearly showing through Okta is that we are going to more places. I track and we track as a company kind of a conversation that the Harvard Business Review has been talking about in terms of context switching in the workplace. And that number has gone from 700 to 800 to 900 to 1100. And we're talking 11 seconds going on a screen and then off to another screen, then off to another screen, then off to another screen. I mean, all of those context switches is friction. And I think this is one of the biggest organizational challenges they have. I, as a stakeholder, might go find the tool that works best for me and my area of responsibility, but it might be of no use or unable to find by somebody else, and consequently, that's now a source of friction. And I think this is, from our viewpoint as Workgrid, the integration capability for intranets and the thing that pulls stuff together. That to us is the big challenge that we're focused on, that we are honed in on 100%.
And that's the big sell, right? For the digital assistant. I mean, is to cut through a lot of that complexity. And I mean, folks have been talking about it a while, but it's not simple to build your own, right? So around
no, exactly. And then even the idea that you can kind of just stop in this application really quick. Like the second I am context switching, the second I am on an application and off to another application, that's a problem. Yep. We really have to allow me to get my work done, get my tasks done, understand my checklists, wherever it is I happen to be. And if I'm inside Igloo reading some news or updating or seeing a policy, I should be able to pop down and pull up my work list, understand those things, and not have to change that context. That I think is the goal of digital, is the goal. That's how we attack digital friction.
Yeah, Jerry McGovern has a nice term around this. I think it's Jerry. He talks about tool time, that the time you spend trying to use the tools or trying to find the thing, instead of actually doing work that you're paid for, and you want to kind of minimize that idea of tool time. But Brad, jump on this.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's something that, simplicity and ease of use are two big things. Obviously, regardless of where you're working in today's world of work, you should be able to connect to your organization. As Frank mentioned, the idea of, that Workgrid overlay within an Igloo digital workplace allows very much for you to see what tasks are important to you. It allows for that personalization aspect, that sort of thing. We face those challenges in any digital workplace with being able to find information that's critical for me to do my job, and really cutting down on the amount of time that I spend searching and increasing the amount of time I spend doing is really kind of a key takeaway from this. And this is a challenge that all digital workplace managers are facing. It's just the idea that we have this ecosystem, if you will, and everybody's got kind of a home, but at the same time, understanding that architecture enough to be able to make sure that people are able to find things easily and dare I say equitably. I mentioned the term off the top, the democratization of information. And we had a customer story from a while back that I just loved. And they talked about the idea that, in the previous world, going to a users conference, that was a privileged thing, or going to a company conference. We had airfare, we had hotels, we had logistics to take care of getting people out there. And this particular customer, they did a users conference within the context of their digital ecosystem. And all of a sudden, everybody was able to attend that. And the feedback from that became something that was incredibly repeatable. So it really is the idea of again, getting back to the workforce dispersal, making sure everybody has that same access, making sure it's easy, making sure it's personalized, and making sure people can find what they need. It's not time consuming. So I think there's a lot of really good points in there.
And that's that idea about culture again, isn't it? I mean, as the physical, I won't say breaks, but lessons in terms of significance in modern workforces, then the digital has to pick up the slack. As you say, bring people together in ways that may have been done, all in the one big meeting room. But of course, that's not today's environment. And so in terms of sort of that digital friction idea, I mean, I think, how do we really make progress on that? Frank, what are your views on that?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. The IT's view is, well, we get rid of digital friction by having IT choose the tools, right? Okay, so no, let's just admit that is one viewpoint. We get rid of friction by having one person decide, and let's immediately state for the record that never works. But that's one viewpoint. That one's left. The next thing is to figure out, and this is where, honestly, James, this is where consulting comes in. This is where there's a strategy component to it. Let's just cop to the fact that we're going to bring tools in. Great. Now, how do we adopt them properly? How do we handle the change management? How do we best serve you get full utility of these applications out to everybody? How do we allow us? How do we go and bring the capabilities of these things that, the simple transactions that people need, make them easily available to people in an easy place to find? That, to us, is the approach that you take, because this tool proliferation is just going to happen. It's really best practices on bringing tools in, and what can we do to bring them in and have them be successful, as opposed to just buying a tool and then hoping somebody can find it. That has a short shelf life, the success.
That's where I think for us, storytelling is really important around this. So we did a piece of work where we went out and we did just before COVID field research for an organization that had aged care homes and had community workers who would go out to people who are still living in their homes and provide them with assistance. And we went off and we spent time with these aged care homes, and we discussed what they did and what their day looked like. We did some work with them to kind of do a day in the life of a worker, and it was terrifying. I mean, it was disturbing, because to that idea about digital friction. I mean, the tools that were provided were utterly inappropriate for the solution. Nothing worked together. They were still using cordless phones as a way of communicating. And at the beginning of the shift, they'd have to print out the patient records, which might be 100 pages, and they were required to know all of these details. But if they're looking up to 30 patients, that's 3,000 pages of stuff they're allegedly reading each shift. And when the pandemic hit, you could see why aged care homes, were hit so hard. Obviously the residents were very much more at risk. But I don't know what it was like elsewhere in Australia. A lot of the aged care system crumbled in the face of this. And I think one of the reasons is that we just didn't provide support to these people in any effective way. And stories like that people care about.
Yeah.
Because they bring life to this. These are nurses, these are aged care workers, and so it takes it from an abstract concept. It's hard to get stuff done, and we've got too many tools, and it makes it concrete, and that's where we really see the power.
Yeah, to me that seems to be just that is a great example of the fact that we are not doing employee-centric design or how we design our workplaces. We are just buying tools for the sake of buying some tools. And I'm sure there is a perfectly good reason for something, or not replacing those cordless phones. But we see that with any number of tools that are coming in. Honestly, it's everything from LMSs to, it's even in software cases. It's not even the deskless workers. And I think this is one of the huge organizations are making right now. I think there is some degree of hope in this. We were taking a look at spend in the work tech category recently. And what we saw from 2021 to 2022 is, the biggest riser in the top 10 category was communication and collaboration tools. Was, how do we go and, which was, down in the lower half, I want to say 7, 8, 9, was suddenly in the top 5.
Wow.
Payroll still matters, learning still matters, but it's really, how do I make my coworkers work with my other coworkers? How do I, how do I go create that cohort experience? And I think this is, to some extent, probably the realization that we can't software our way out of this problem. There is no single magic tool, and numbers of processes need to, from my earlier analogy, if I got to go equip a new employee, I have to go to both the desk buying app and the chair buying app and then the PC buying app, and still retain the employee with all the training and onboarding and all the other stuff. That's a terrible experience if you ask them to go through 10 different. I mean, it's no wonder that you have new hires ghosting companies on their second day, right? That sort of stuff not going to allow you to retain people.
Yeah, there's a phrase that we use quite often when we're talking about intranets, digital workplaces. It's the idea of establishing a source of truth. And the idea that Frank has talked about with having this dispersal of tech, looking at the dispersal of information, James, is in your example with the aged care homes, that sort of thing, or not having the right information in the right hands. That reduction of digital friction, for me, what it really comes back to is establishing that source of truth. And I think that's where, again, we have that idea of that Workgrid Igloo partnership, where the digital workplace is established as a source of truth for corporate knowledge, for communications, that sort of thing. And then we've got that source of truth providing you with those other feeds from sources of truth, those other applications that you need that are providing you with the other tasks that you're doing in your day. And I think that really helps cut through a lot of the information or application overload, simply because we do have a method to establish what's being used in the organization, that sort of thing. We do have a method to establish what's the right policies, procedures, things like that, and to get them to the people who need to on a mobile solution, or if they're a desk worker, being able to access the digital workplace at any point. So I mean, that source of truth is one of the big things that we need to establish to combat the idea of digital friction. One of my biggest problems working in tech organizations for as long as I have been is we bring in these applications and then it's like, okay, well, where do I find that? Where do I find that exactly? There's a ticket out there. Okay, great. Is it in AHA? Is it in Jira? Is it in Zendesk? Where does that ticket live? And unless I have somebody who's provided me a specific link, I only have a certain amount of things to work on. But if I have something that's popping up and saying, hey, you have a new ticket here, and it's providing me that because I'm looking at my digital workplace and my Workgrid bar pops up and says, hey, Brad, you've got this going on. That really helps me dive through that digital friction.
Especially if I don't need to know what the system is. I'm told I have a thing. Correct. And I need to go there and go get a thing done, or say yes, or say no, or say up, or say down, or pick the color of chair, and off we go. Fantastic. I mean, I think that's where we want to go to. I think the other component of this, because you see systems of records are aspiring to be this, but this goes back to your earlier point, James. My ITSM system, where I'm holding IT policy, was never meant to be a cultural force. The same thing with my CRM tool and my CMS tool. The only place that I'm going to get that analog to a customer experience is something that is branded that has some care about the messaging, that is driven around the idea of messaging to my employees. My ITSM solution is just a place to go and do tickets and push through policies, and its tone by design is cold. Well, if you're fighting for talent, the message should be vibrant. The landing page should be engaging. There should be video. It should be fun. I should feel a sense of community with my fellow employees, and I should also be able to go get stuff done. That is really something from this perspective that's only done by an intranet. That this is why the intranet does matter and has to be done right here. And I think these days there is a temptation in some corners of IT to say we can do away with it. We'll just create 800 Slack groups and everything will be happy.
And I've seen that in a startup, and my goodness, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
But isn't that interesting, right? I mean, it's, Brad, in many ways you're talking about intranet fundamentals, stuff that's been around for, for a couple of decades, but is no less important now. And Frank, you're talking about, the digital assistant, that sort of centralization of the experience of tasks, and then bringing those two things together, which I think is fascinating to be able to do that in the one conversation, because, historically, those two camps have been very far apart. Intranet teams are focused on the fundamentals, because, there's only one of them or two of them in an organization, and they've all got a heck of a lot to do. So,
but it's inevitable, right? Like, this is the direction of spend. The employee experience is the digital experience now, and we are starting to call this guided attention technology, and it is an acknowledgement of the fact that there are so many pings and dings and things that are drawing our attention. Can I pull them all together? Great, awesome. Where do I need to put it? Igloo is a great place to go put it. So you marry those two things together, and that creates a force for good in the intranet, a force for good in the employee experience. And if you see just how much companies are spending to find talent, like the amount to spend on talent acquisition tools is enormous. What if we can improve the digital experience by 5% and retain employees another 10% longer? Isn't that a lot easier than trying to replace John Doe with John Doe 2 or John Doe Jr.?
No, it's a huge savings.
Yeah.
I mean, it's I love the idea about guided attention. We'll talk more about that in a second. But it's interesting. I mean, we've still got a way to go. I mean, one of the things that came out of the DEX survey that I mentioned earlier is that 49% of respondents indicated that experience design is only applied to technology solutions a little or not at all. And that's, so basically, half of people are saying these solutions are not designed whatsoever, which is kind of shocking, right? And particularly if we are talking about the importance of employee experience and we are talking about bringing in modern tools, then you'd think that this would be considered as a matter of fact, but it's not.
It's not. I mean, it's not surprising if you think about it from the point of view who buys the software. Nobody is buying an SAP ERP based on the fantastic UX and the funny emojis that are possible in it. They're buying it for its ability to streamline your procurement system and deal with the disruptions in the supply chain and data feeds and those things. It is the huge power back. And honestly, that is the bulk of what the engineering team is doing. I was talking to a company recently that does fantastic stuff around asking employees to go find an extra day off. They are attacking the problem of improving employees' use of PTO. And they have algorithms, and they have scheduling tools, and they tie into a myriad of back-end systems. Their UX is just like a text message that pops out. Underneath it, there's this enormous complexity, but UX is like the last thing they're doing because so much of what they have to solve is so huge.
Yes.
that's the nature. It's really only companies like us who are not a system of record, or companies like Igloos that are really focused on employee experience, that are thinking about, well, what does the user see? We're beholden to the employee. Most of these other systems are beholden to the customer record, or the thing that's in the asset in your digital asset management system, or the transactions, or your close of quarter financial systems. Employee-centric designs only happen with things that are thinking about the employees, and that's really kind of intranet vendors, that's like Igloo and people like us.
But let's not, I guess, undersell the degree to which you two are visionaries in terms of all of this. We run global awards, the Intranet Digital Workplace Awards, and a few years ago, we gave a platinum award to Liberty Mutual for what ultimately then evolved to become Workgrid. And we don't often give out platinum awards. Probably only 1 year in 3 do we give them that, because they're the entries into the awards that are so outstanding that it's obvious that clearly this is the best. So I do think, while, I think people understand conceptually the importance of user experience and the idea about bringing this stuff together, still it's not, happening, all that widely at all. And that's obviously where, you're blazing a trail around this. But then, what other mistakes are people sort of making, do you see, Brad?
I think in a lot of cases, first off, it's getting a tool like a digital workplace and making it available only to a certain portion of the company, or worse yet, making it live within only a certain portion of the company, that sort of thing. So you'll see it's like they'll acquire a digital workplace, and then responsibility for that will live solely with IT, that sort of thing. IT is a great factor to bake into the digital workplace, to have their own space, to have something that speaks to them as a unit. But really, it should live with a committee, like taking advantage of the ability to disperse this digital workplace across the organization to make it available. I've come back to that democratization point a couple of times, but that's really a big thing. And then thinking of some of the other mistakes that people are making, it is that lack of employee-centric design. That's something that we're always trying to consider and to rectify, starting to look at, what is the employee experience, and how does the employee feel when they're logging in and looking at their digital workplace, and what is that experience bringing in terms of value to their overall employee experience. And then when you roll in the idea of actually bringing in all these disparate tools and having them centralized within a central location, allowing you to get those tasks done, that's another big thing that organizations are failing with, and it's an opportunity they can seize, is the idea that people are just absolutely getting, not necessarily confused, but overwhelmed. We talked about the idea of 800 Slack channels, that sort of thing. We want to reduce that as much as possible. So as much as we can centralize this into a portion of the digital ecosystem and make it that, as I use the term, the source of truth, I think there's a lot of opportunity there, certainly for folks to be able to simplify and yet magnify that employee experience and really cement themselves within the digital ecosystem.
And then building on that, I think we see that there's a gap, an absence of a future vision for what this looks like within a given organization. Mm-hmm. So, again, conceptually, we want to bring this stuff together. We're all in violent agreement that, we need to be designing stuff for employees, but obviously we're not the ones that have any of the power in organizations. But this stuff doesn't magically bring us stuff together.
No.
We don't automatically or easily deliver solutions that are highly usable. And so this is where I said there's, the real power around digital employee experience, because, we've been off talking to senior leaders about this, in our clients and elsewhere. And they hadn't come across the idea before, but they get it immediately. We find we're really pushing on an open door, because they know that there are these issues, that projects and programs of work are not aligned, and that tools aren't necessarily coming together, and that a lot of money is being spent in ways that aren't fully effective. We've got, new HR system, but yet we're struggling to get people to use it fully. And so they, those are discussions, at a C-suite level, but they never had language to say, where are we trying to get to? And so the idea is that digital employee experience is both a bottom-up sort of approach, which is, user experience. Let's design stuff in ways that make sense to people, but it's a top-down vision thing. And whether that's a day in the life of how people work in the future, whether that's a vision statement, but then that, again, to your point, Brad, that then allows governance at a much more meaningful level and a much more strategic level, so that we have, not just, HR, IT, and comms, or only one of them, but actually we have the business as well, because that's often where people fall down, is that, oh, well, we've involved all the key stakeholders. Yeah, except the people who actually make the money and deliver all the services.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And again, if we provide a framework for them to come together, then there is a voice, and there is a direction that then underpins, some of this work.
The idea. Sorry. Go, Frank. Go, Frank.
I was gonna add, and I think the thing we should add to this right now, in this age of quiet quitting, great resignation, the war for talent, it's now also an organizational imperative, right? If you don't have that great digital experience, if you don't pay attention to these problems, if you don't get out of your siloed problem, we are all battling for talent. The reason, one of the things that Liberty Mutual did your Platinum Award is an example. The reason what drives Liberty Mutual is an aspiration to be one of the 100 best places to work in a very competitive labor market. And some of the way they do that is by paying attention to the digital employee experience and going that extra step to make sure that it is compelling and easy to work in. That same thing. I mean, and I think that there's a change right now. That's it. It matters right now, and the war for talent is just so acute.
Yep.
That you can't skimp on this anymore, and there has to be peace between the silos.
You brought up the term, James, bottom up. The whole idea bottom up. And I think that's one of the big opportunities that gets missed with a lot of organizations, because you also brought up the idea of top down. And I think a lot of organizations get into the digital workplace space, the idea of buying one and getting one set up because they want to talk to their employees. And I think in a lot of cases, and this is where we're starting to see a lot of improvements with a lot of the culture aspects, things like that, they forget what their employees have to say back. And I think, one of the big opportunities is creating that bottom up trajectory as well. You don't necessarily, you mentioned governance, and you don't necessarily have to open the doors and say, hey, come on in and create what you want. But if you can create paths for people to communicate, to express themselves, be it in cultural fashions, or be it as part of an onboarding process where they've gone through and they're able to review it and pass on knowledge to others, even something as blasé as it might seem, like welcoming other people to the organization within the confines of the digital workplace, and creating that sense of comradeship as soon as people join. That bottom up level is it's an unplumbed gem. Honestly, I think there's a lot there that can be explored, and sometimes I think that gets ignored in favor of the greater vision of, well, we want our employees to know where all the information is, and we want them to know what we say to them. There's also great value in what employees can say to us, and I think that's something that it can really be explored with the right UX, because if it's easy to use, then the employees they don't feel intimidated, and they don't feel that this is a pain to be able to go in and share those views.
One of the things, though, one of the questions we asked in the survey was, at what level is digital employee experience being driven within the organization? Is it centrally or top down? Is it within individual business units, or is it sort of individual bottom up by employees? And the reality is that it's primarily driven within business units and followed by bottom up by employees. It's least driven top down. And that, one of the really disturbing facts is that there's a significant percentage where people are saying it is not being driven at all from the top down, from senior leaders, and that's a massive gap, because there's only so far you can go without that, right?
I'm willing to bet you that a good portion of the bottom up component is being driven by exit interviews. It's not being driven positively, but it's being driven by people saying, "Oh, this sucks. I'm checked out."
Yep.
What component of this is being driven by, here's a way to make it better, versus complaints followed by, is it being driven by reacting to friction and people leaving, as opposed to, making positive steps. And that's a shame, because you've lost that person already. And what can we do to make that better?
So then, in terms of positive steps, in terms of the future, I mean, what are the big trends that you're both seeing, and what do you expect to see over the next year or two? Frank?
We are going, we have really fallen, let me start over on that one. We've taken a look at the market, and we've really have embraced the concept of guided attention. We feel this is the mission of Workgrid, is to bring guided attention technology to the masses. Guided attention is first, it is a realization that there are a lot of pieces of software out there that people are going to have. There's more pings, dings, and things that are trying to draw our attention. How do we fold those all together and bring the right things to the right people in whatever interface they happen to be working in? And how do we change that context switching time and tool time, to use your earlier analogy? But it is really kind of a focus on this trend we've all seen that now needs to be attacked. And as this goes forward, it's an interesting and evolving market, because we are seeing a lot of spend on AI technologies in those products. But the thing is, if you think about it, if I'm my chair buying app, if I've put AI in, it's there to go and make you buy another chair. It's not necessarily working for me. It's working for the piece of software and meant to drive more traffic to it. That's good for the software. It might not necessarily be good for me as an employee. So the trend is going to start to be, how do we manage those pings and dings? How do we traffic cop them, or curate them, or bring them into order, raise the prominence of certain ones, and turn those sources of information and those streams of information into trusted streams that we can marry up to cultural messages and communications messages, so that people actually start to say, I trust this digital assistant. It's got my best interests. It is dealing with my mess, and it's making my day better. That to us is the big goal.
And that's a big change, right? I mean, it's until recently, and even more so perhaps with the introduction of modern platforms, every vendor wants to own the employee experience. And to your point, that's fine individually. Yes, that your chair buying app, definitely wants to completely, take control of your experience of, well, I guess, buying chairs. But when you've got 50 of these, then this is a pretty hopeless environment. And we tried this whole, one platform to rule them all in the bad old days of portals, right?
Yeah.
Where
I remember Lotus.
Yeah, but where there was the one pain that, even though it had a horrendous user experience, everything was going to sit in underneath that, and that was not a happy era. And so I like the idea about guided attention, because it's not about saying, I'm going to become the one platform to rule them all, and you must all be subjugated to me, because I don't think we're ever going back to that, thank goodness. But it's also not giving up and saying, well, I'm just going to, let each vendor present stuff as they see fit, and we're not going to let the users, muddle their way through this.
I think this is one of those things we are going to have to manage, because we know for a fact the large vendors, and I don't need to name them all, do believe that there is a panacea out there by you living entirely within their ecosystem. But is that the best way to do things? And what will happen inevitably when somebody buys the tool that's not part of that ecosystem, because there's a better point solution out there.
Yeah.
We're going to be wrestling with this in IT departments and HR departments and digital experience cohorts for the next decade.
So then, Brad, what do you see as kind of the sort of next trends in your world?
Definitely personalization, and I think that speaks to both Frank's point about the idea of that guided attention, where I'm seeing my stuff, but really that personalization aspect where I log in and this is a digital workplace that is built for me, and it's built for me and serves me in my job function. That sort of aspect there first and foremost. Frank made a point about AI. I mean, I'm hearing a lot about AI in the area of intranets and digital workplaces, but more in kind of that benevolent sense. We talked about a little earlier, the idea of things like recommended content or areas that, things that are trending, whatever the case may be, that's giving me, again, more intelligence based on who I am in order to do my job better and to get the information I need to do my job. Those are two really big things I see. Certainly, analytics is always going to be a big thing, knowing how you're performing, knowing how your digital workplace is performing, knowing when knowledge resources need to be updated, replaced, things like that. And then I think for me, it really is so much of it right now is about culture and self-service, and being able to see that organizational culture represented, to be able to feel a part of something no matter where I am, to be able to participate in that, to participate in the things that I want to participate, and to do so with minimal roadblocks and fences to jump over, that sort of thing. So that's where we get into the idea of self-service, and definitely that simplification, creating what ultimately is going to be a much more streamlined, personalized, easy to use and relevant digital experience within the tools that I'm using.
And I think both of the answers that I've just heard in terms of future trends are super powerful.
Okay.
And I'm I'm really excited to hear them. And then for my part, it's the evolution of digital employee experience, which is a journey that I think we're all on. The idea is conceptually sound. People, you can get your hands around it, at a high level, people get it. But then what does that look like in detail? Because I do think, I put out a half tongue-in-cheek manifesto around digital employee experience about a year ago. But one of the things I flagged is DEX is not owned by one group. So you can't have, DEX purely from an IT perspective. You can't have DEX purely from an HR perspective. The whole
Absolutely
point of DEX is that it's cross-cutting, that it looks holistically at people's experience. And so what we're really trying to do now is to put better shape around this. We've got a DEX enterprise framework that says, well, what are the pieces you need to put in place to make this a reality? And there's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
This is a big change for organizations, but I think that's, I'm really encouraged to see that the concept of digital employee experience is now naturally falling into chats like this, broader and broader within the globe.
That's such a, sorry.
I'll go for it, Brad.
I was going to say that's such a big shift that we're seeing. And, I've been with Igloo approximately 3 years. In fact, I'm just like a week from my 3-year anniversary. Good for me. But seriously good for me. But what we're looking at, is in the short time I've been with Igloo, I've seen a real transformation from the idea of a singular digital workplace manager to that idea of a committee, to that idea of a support group, to that idea maybe of a digital workplace manager de facto, but they've got a team working under them, all of whom they're not spending their dedicated 40-hour work week working on the digital workplace, but at the same time, they've got dedicated tasks and roles to support the digital workplace and really to make sure that it is running on all cylinders and to make sure that it's representative of the organization across all departments. And just you brought it home there with that idea that it cannot live in just one silo or one department. It's going to stagnate there. And I mean, even if it's thriving, is it really getting accurate input from other departments, from other employees, other walks of life, if in fact it's being run by one department. So, I mean, I'm loving seeing that departure to larger communities of practice that are actually caring for and nurturing the digital workplace.
I think, I echo that. I think it is high time. It's long overdue, probably, that we've gotten out of the, kind of the component of being inside communications. These cross-functional teams. I was about to say, I'm willing to bet you that team is cross-functional. That's the only way that we get there. And I think those cross-functional cohorts are the future of this. And pulling it together is going to be the great big challenge companies are going to have.
Absolutely.
That's okay. So we're coming to the end of our chat here. So maybe the way to finish is to give a motivational message for intranet or digital workplace or DEX teams, out there. I'm putting you two on the spot here, but what is the inspirational, motivational message that you would give to teams in terms of how to proceed or what the opportunities are? Frank.
In a couple of years, every company is going to have a digital employee experience leader and team. And the question really you have to wrestle with is, are you going to get on board with this realization, or are you going to stand in the way? Are you going to hold your fiefdom tight, attempt to defend people from HR coming into IT or IT coming into HR, or comms being interfered with both? Or are you going to embrace the bigger message and figure out how to manage change management across the two? If you are a communicator, are you going to embrace technology? If you are a technologist, are you going to start to think about employee retention and employee survey results? And if you are in HR, are you going to start to think about the fact that tools are everywhere, and it's not just about pushing out messages and pushing out programs, but it's really about wellness, and it's about far more than the annual survey. It's really about pulse surveys and constant check-ins and having dexterity. I think the biggest opportunity is to start to embrace this trend towards these things. The cohort that Brad was talking about, companies that are going to win are going to be the ones who figure out how to get this done right. And people who win, who are in this market, are the ones who rise to that attention and start to become cross-functional, work with business stakeholders to start to drive positive outcomes through digital experience. I think that is the big opportunity, both personally for individuals as well as for companies as a whole.
Nice. Well, we all like winners. Great. Brad, what's your takeaway message on all this?
I think for me, we were asking for kind of an inspirational message, and I think the first thing that I would look at is the idea that, the future of work is here. We talk about the future of work all the time. The future of work is here. We're shaping it every day. And I think that digital workplace managers, these digital workplace committees, organizations that are bringing in digital workplaces and nurturing their digital ecosystems, we have the tools, we have the capability, and we're developing and maintaining and growing the knowledge to do these things even better, to do these things really well. Concepts like digital employee experience haven't been around all that long as actually sound concepts. And the fact that we're seeing these things develop, the fact that we're starting to have a lot more conversations about personalization aspects, about ease of access, about the way that the where of where I operate has changed. These are opportunities. We have so many opportunities in front of us to really make our mark and to create something that is absolutely wonderful. It's a bountiful resource for our employees. It's something that represents our organization absolutely to a T. One of the things I loved, our CEO Mike Gaboro said some time ago, organizations need to take as much pride in their digital workplace as they do in that big fancy front lobby that we talked about off the top of the call. So
the empty front lobby.
The empty front lobby, exactly. So I think there's so many opportunities to get everything that makes your organization wonderful into that digital representation of your organization, and to make your employees happy, and to attract and retain and keep those quality employees that are going to make your organizations just all they can be. So, I mean, for me, I think the message is go forward, learn, keep building, partner, and just, you know, communicate in some of these communities that we're starting to see spring up, and really take advantage of all the knowledge that's out there and the knowledge that we're really starting to see develop, because it's a big, wonderful world, and I think there's a lot we can do.
And I'm going to bounce off your answer, Brad, which I think is lovely, and say that, you know, don't be afraid to focus on the human in the picture. You know, in part because that's where all the opportunities are, you know, to your point, Frank, in terms of the future vision, and Brad are the opportunities in terms of delivering better solutions. These things happen when we focus on the human in the picture. But the other reason for putting that focus there is that for teams that are going to be, that are listening to this chat, that have chosen to join this conversation online, you're already passionate about making life better for people. And it's so easy to lose sight of that, you know, in the fight for internal politics, or the challenge to get resources, or wrestling with IT, any of those things. I mean, these are not easy roles in the practitioner groups that are listening in on this chat. But if to reach out and focus on the humans in the picture, that will rekindle your passion for why you're in this space. So not only will it help you deliver better solutions, but it's going to give you a reason to go to work in the day, and to really keep you focused on the future. And that's where the opportunity is. So
that's a really excellent point.
Rounding out. So thank you very much, Frank and Brad. It's been a wonderful chat, and look forward to continuing these conversations online and over the next years.
Absolutely. Thanks, James.
Thanks very much.
Farewell from me.